Donald Trump has been incredibly indecisive over foreign policy in regard to Afghanistan. And as a result, it seems as though terrorist organizations, including the Taliban, are now gaining more momentum in the country. So instead of approving their plan for more troops as anticipated, the president has caught his generals off guard by questioning whether the 16-year-long effort to stabilize Afghanistan is still worth it. Now, prior to this story breaking, there was a meeting that Donald Trump had with generals in mid-July. And during that meeting, he was supposed to finally come up with a decision over what to do in Afghanistan. Do we pull out our troops? Do we commit more troops on the ground? And the meeting did not end well. And as you can tell, he's still indecisive. NBC did a really great report on that meeting, so I want to show you a snippet of that. Let's take a look.
Senior administration officials take NBC News inside that meeting 2 weeks ago, where the president's key advisors surrounded him, including Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis. Those sources say the president lashed out, suggesting Mattis should fire the general in charge of Afghanistan, venting, quote, "We aren't winning," influenced, it seemed, by a meeting he'd had earlier with veterans of the Afghan war. Those same sources tell NBC News some in the room were taken aback by an analogy the president made, referencing the renovation of a favorite New York restaurant led by an outside consultant to illustrate how those on the ground might make better decisions than those at higher levels.
His point was perhaps it would have been better if that owner had gone to the employees who are working in the restaurant rather than hired someone from the outside, and it's wasted a lot of money.
Those officials say the president also seemed annoyed China, not the US, is making money mining rare minerals in Afghanistan. Sources tell NBC News the president left the meeting without deciding on a strategy and that his advisors left stunned.
By the way, in that meeting, he was reported to be particularly harsh to Mattis, and Mattis ended up leaving for a long walk so he can kind of think about things and what his next steps will be. But I think, look, the story has a lot of moving parts, but what I want you guys to pay attention to is the issue of China mining for the minerals. Trump is bitter about that. And also, he wasn't given one option. He was given a variety of options, including pulling troops out or committing more troops. And he doesn't like any of them, probably because there are some financial considerations that he wants them to take into account, and they haven't yet.
So I've got a lot of mixed feelings about this, so let's talk about all the different angles. First, on the minerals, I want to be clear, he doesn't think we should get contracts to mine the minerals, he just wants to take them.
That's right.
And he said this during the campaign, and people thought he was exaggerating when he said, well, we went to Iraq and we spent all that money, why don't we just take their oil? And people thought, well, no, he's oversimplifying, that's insane. Of course we can't just take their oil, then the whole country would be an open revolt to us and we could never get out, right? No, now he's president, he's saying, well, they've got like $1 trillion of minerals in Afghanistan. Why don't we at least take it to pay for the war? No, that would be stealing. That would be robbing from them. And if you thought you had a bad fight in Afghanistan today, wait till you let it get a load of Afghanistan if you do that. Now, but there are plenty of things that I sympathize with Trump on here, which is rare. So, one, he's right, there are no good options in Afghanistan. Two, now let's remember, Obama took a long time to make a decision on Afghanistan, so fair is fair. Three, the generals want to push him in a certain direction. And by the way, one of the reasons why that stuff got leaked to NBC, why there's an article in Politico, is a lot of the generals in the military industrial complex going, why won't he just do more war already?
That's right. And McCain has responded to all of this by saying, Trump is being indecisive, and so I might take matters into my own hands and do what I can to commit more troops. And I'll get to some of the more detailed proposals that McCain has. But yeah, the generals want more war. John McCain, unsurprisingly, with his hawkish nature, wants more war. And so half of Trump's intentions, I would say, are good intentions because he realizes that what we've been doing has been failing.
And he apparently met with real veterans from Afghanistan. Wonderful, that's the most he's ever done for veterans.
That's true.
I'll give more credit to Trump here. This is unprecedented, and then I'll tell you what his actual plan is, which is not good. In 2013, he said about Afghanistan, we should leave Afghanistan immediately. No more wasted lives. If we have to go back in, we go in hard and quick, rebuild the US first. he's right about that. He should just simply do that. That is one of the options, and he can stop thinking about it and just do his original plan. And in July of this year, when he's president, so just last month, he said, we've been there now for close to 17 years, and I want to find out why we've been there for 17 years and how it's going and what we should do in terms of additional ideas. About whether there'll be more troops there, he said, we'll see. So those instincts are good. And then his generals, and they view this to be like a positive thing, and they gave it to Politico as like, come on, we want more war, right? The Afghan government controls or influences only 60% of the country this summer, and they say last summer they controlled 65% of the country. So they're saying it's deteriorating, and hence we should put more troops in. But wait a minute, we've had troops there for 17 years, and you still only control 60% of the country? And you thought it was a great thing when they controlled 65% of the country last year? No, all of these things are disastrous. Get out, get out, get out. Now, so that's a lot of praise for Trump and the direction he seems to be going. The minerals are a good point by Anna. There's a huge counterpoint. Doesn't understand how this thing works, and basically looking for how do I get, to be fair, not Trump directly, how do we get rich off of this thing?
Right.
That's the way his mind works. But much worse is that if he just wanted to get out, he could actually make that decision. He's the commander in chief. He can just order it and we're done with it, which is what he's been saying for all along. Why don't you just do it? Well, there's a reason why. He's thinking about privatizing the military in Afghanistan. Now, this has a couple of components. One, it takes power away from the government and it gives it to unaccountable private mercenaries. Now, okay, number two, the guys he's thinking of hiring is led by Erik Prince, the guy who used to run Blackwater, who is the brother of Betsy DeVos, and the DeVos family is one of the top donors to Republicans in this election cycle. So, and Erik Prince is also the guy who went and met with the Russians in a secret meeting in Seychelles that we found out about a couple of months ago. So Erik Prince is helping Trump with the Russians, and his family gave more money to the Republicans than almost anyone in the country. And all of a sudden, Trump thinks, well, I don't like the option of leaving anymore. I don't like the option of putting in more troops. And he's, in other words, biding his time to introduce the option of, why don't we just give it to my friend Erik Prince and let him make billions of dollars off of it? That way the millions he gave us will be repaid by billions from taxpayers.
That's right.
And the mercenaries will be unaccountable so they can do whatever the hell they want. Erik Prince wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal in May arguing for this position, and he said we should just have a viceroy. We're going back to viceroys? And by the way, not a government one. Not one accountable to our democracy,
right?
But a private viceroy for a mercenary army.
And think about the ramifications of Blackwater or this private organization having complete control with a lack of oversight. Now, of course, there's the cost component of that, where we're going to have to spend a ton of money paying these private contractors to handle the situation in Afghanistan. But there's also the issue of how Blackwater behaved in the past during the Bush administration. And so, look, people can deny it as much as they want, but our actions in the Middle East have only led to more instability and more hostility toward the United States. You have Blackwater type guys back in control in a place like Afghanistan. I mean, you think they're going to treat people fairly or in a nonviolent way? I think it's actually going to lead to even more hostility toward the United States. It's a really bad idea.
And by nonviolent, what we mean is in a way that gets the country on our side so we can quote unquote liberate it and then eventually leave so taxpayers stop paying money and so that we stop losing troops and we have stability in the region. And so look, you know my opinion of Trump is not very high, to say the least. But if he does the right thing and says, hey, after 17 years, this isn't working. I agree with the veterans, I agree with the libertarians, I agree with a lot of the right wing who says we should get out, the nationalists, I agree with progressives, etc. We're leaving. Then I'm gonna give him all the credit in the world on that issue, okay? And I'm happy to do that, I can't wait to do that. But if they go to a mercenary army instead, and they would be paramilitary units and not subject to oversight by the United States military. And they're bragging that they're calling this the Laos option. You remember what we did with Laos during Vietnam? Did that go well? That ended in disaster. But they put it out there like, oh yeah, let's just do the same thing we did over there. as if it was a positive thing. So if he goes in this direction to enrich his donors at the expense of our democracy, let alone what might happen in Afghanistan when these mercenaries take over, it will be hideous. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse option than more military escalation in Afghanistan, he will have found an even worse option. Help us build independent media. Become a member of the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.